Okay, we're looking at the manifestation process, an overview today. I've given this series before. It's actually a series of 6. I think we advertised it as 5, but the actual lessons are 5, but I'll go through those today and just give an idea of what we'll be covering for the next 5 weeks. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this is, first of all, I would say it comes from the work of Thomas Troward. And Thomas Troward is pretty difficult to read. Dale, I think, would rather get a root canal than have to read Thomas Troward. But he is a writer, or was a writer, that you've got to stay with, you've got to contemplate, you've got to skip a lot of stuff, kind of go through. But I have gotten 5 steps of the manifestation process out of his book, the Edinburgh Lectures. And I have tried to listen to it through talking books, and it's very difficult to listen to. But what happens to me as I'm reading or listening to anything by Troward is pretty soon a light comes on. It comes on here and comes on there. And when it does come on, it's a pretty profound light. And so I find what he says here very interesting, and it is based on the principle that Jesus talked about a prayer, that whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe you have received. Jesus does not go into detail on how to do that. How do you believe you've received something you don't have? And the gospel writers did not pursue that, the how-to of that process, but people like Thomas Troward do. And so it's worth looking at their writings in order to get to the principles that we're talking about here. As you read the Gospels, and frankly, the Gospels and the Bible as a whole are about as difficult to read as Thomas Troward. So I don't want to give him a black eye, as the result of this, because it's some of the writings, if we're looking for pure inspiration, are rather difficult to wade through. But what we gather from the gospel writers is that Jesus appealed to the common person, to the average person. And anytime a person who is different than the average person comes into play, it's often because they are challenging Jesus. They're a person of power, of authority, someplace that doesn't like what he's saying. But when the gospel writers talk about the crowds, that follow or that gather to hear him talk, we get the distinct impression that he is very attractive to the average person. And one of the reasons I think this is true is because he explained things to them from a spiritual basis that made sense and that were practical to their everyday life, that were applicable, I should say, to their everyday life. If Jesus would have said to people, I'm the Messiah, I've come as a sacrifice for your sins, which began with Adam. I'm going to die for you. You have to accept me as your personal Savior for that to take hold. And in several thousand years, I'm going to come back, and we're going to have God's kingdom on earth. Do you think that would appeal to the average person, to the common person? A message like that would appeal to the average person? It doesn't appeal to me. It appealed to me in the beginning because I thought that I had to accept that's what the good news was. But to me, that is not good news. And we don't know how many more thousands of years we're going to have to wait before he does show up. And frankly, I don't believe he has any intention of returning. Why would he? why would anybody want to go through that again? As I've said, I don't want to reincarnate just on the basis of having to be a teenager again. I don't really want to go through that again. But if we do, we do. But that's a very important question to ask is, why would a person like Jesus, if he gave that message, appeal to the common person? And I think the answer is a lot simpler than we might think. That is that he was able to take spiritual principles that were abstract and out of reach to all but the professionals, and to put them in the hands of people that could do something with them. The woman at the well, for example, the Samaritan woman at the well that he met there, he talked about if she knew who he was or what he taught, that she could have this living water and would never thirst again. And she said, well, give me some of this living water so I won't have to come here and do this job. Come and draw water every day. You know, people were interested in how can spiritual principles make my life easier. And I think that's what appealed to the masses. That's what appealed to the common folks. And the reason that the religious authorities seem to be at odds with Jesus is because that upsets the apple cart. That upsets the norm. If they could practice spiritual principles without needing the religious professionals to tell them how to do it, then that puts their jobs in jeopardy. And in a sense, it's when Jesus gave the parable of the sower that goes out and throws seed and it lands on different types of soil, that the first level is the trodden path. And that represents the academic approach that everybody is walking, that path everybody is thinking from. That's the religious norm. You go, you don't ask that many questions, or if you do ask questions and there is no definite answer, you accept it in faith. So the seed is cast, that is, the inspiration is there, but it can't get beyond that hardened path that all humans trod, or most the masses trod. So Jesus was saying there's another way to approach this whole thing, and it's practical. Just to say that whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe you've received it, that was pretty radical. Because that in itself would set aside any need for religious authority. If what I ask for in prayer is going to come about, and if I ask for bread and know I will not be given a stone, or if I ask for fish and know I will not be given a serpent, he's kind of cutting through a lot of the stuff that is problematic, that requires a professional to interpret, to pass on, to help us understand. You must come here and pray a certain way. You must go through your beads, or you must put your forehead on the ground, or you must do this or that. But prayer is a mindset. It is a state of mind. Paul talked about praying without ceasing. And that's another way of thinking about it. It's an attitude. And so this is where Thomas Troward shines, at least when we dig through his writings, where we can draw from that ideas that actually help us in our daily life, put these principles into practice. And we're talking about visualization, which is imagination. We're talking about the faculty of faith. We're talking about just the knowing aspect, which is very important. Believe you have received. That's the thing. It's not believe in a religious doctrine. It's a state of receptivity, of expectation, I've said many times, you can take the word faith and use the word expectation in its place. It means exactly the same thing. Jesus had many healings, and he would often say, your faith has made you whole, or the faith of the people that brought this ill person to me has made him whole. So faith is a factor, and we don't know how to explain it exactly. We would call it a mystery, but that's not to put it out of our reach in any way, shape, or form. But to say that whatever we ask for in prayer, if we believe that we have received it, we set up a mental and emotional condition that makes way for that thing to come forth. As I say, this or something better. So the first step in this overview is form a clear picture of your desire with the understanding that by so doing, you impress your desire upon the creative life force, and that's my term. That is, God is the creative life force. This understanding takes the first step out of the region of fantasy. So what we're doing is acknowledging what we do all the time. We're always imagining, we're always picturing things, carrying pictures of how life we think it is or should be or we want it to be. We're always carrying a picture, and if you could photograph that picture and compare it to what actually happens in your daily life, you'll see the two are very compatible. We interact with people because of how we see them, how we think of them. We interact with situations because of how we perceive them. And our interaction, our experience with a person or an event can be completely different from that of another, because they have a whole other picture in their mind. And so what determines the difference in one person's experience and another's is not so much the event, not so much the outer thing, as how that thing is perceived and how we interact with it. And that can get very complicated, but it's all about self-image, how we see ourselves. And if we see ourselves as undeserving, that's to me, one of the drawbacks of mainstream Christianity is this whole idea of being born a sinner. And if not born a sinner, just being a sinner. We're all sinners, that's what the Apostle Paul said. And so that's locked on. Do you realize that the church has to have sin to keep its doors open? Do you realize that? Just like medicine has to have disease, law enforcement has to have crime, the military has to have conflict. When you think about that, it's pretty interesting. Without sin, the business of church would not survive. It has to have it. And this whole idea that Jesus died for our sins has to be in there too. And that he's coming back. That has to be there. It's the promise, it's the hope that keeps us going. He hasn't showed up yet, but could be any day. And if you're not saved, you're going to have a problem, a permanent problem. So sin is required. It's part of the whole mechanism of the religious industry. And there's not ever going to come the time when sin will be overcome, because there will be no need for the church when that happens. And I understand why it has developed. There's a side to humankind that is pretty treacherous. And so laws and religious laws and all of these things were originally designed to keep people morally on the up and up. But the deeper you go into your spiritual nature, the more you awaken to your spiritual nature, your morality, the morality you pick up from that is far superior to anything that you learn in Sunday school or church or anywhere else. You're not kind and loving because it's a law. You're kind and loving because you can't help yourself. And that's what we want to get to. We're not practicing something because we have to. We want it to be a natural out-picturing of who and what we are becoming, what we are. So this whole idea of form a clear picture of your desire with the understanding that by so doing you impress your desire upon the creative life force. This is happening all the time. It's happening this very moment. It doesn't start. You can't turn it on and turn it off. It's always happening. This understanding takes the first step out of the region of fantasy. So what the first step is, it's awareness. It's a call to be aware, not only to define a direction you want to go with a particular issue in your life, but it's an awareness of how you're using this faculty of imagination all the time. And it'll go off sometimes. You know, you'll be very positive one moment, and the next moment something will happen and you'll get very negative. But don't look at that as a destructive thing. Just look at it. Just catch it. Catch yourself. Bring yourself back as soon as you can. If you condemn yourself for letting your imagination go the wrong way, does that help or does it hinder? It just adds to the problem. So we don't want to do that. Okay. So each week as we go, we'll get more in depth on all of these steps. Know that you are working with law, with calm expectation of a corresponding result. You know that all necessary conditions will come about in proper order. And that's exactly the same idea as planting the seed. You're not doing that in faith totally. You are doing it in faith. But you are also complying with a certain law. When you drop a seed into the ground, it does a thing that none of us understand. It germinates and it begins to grow. We don't have to know how to do that. But our conditions in life, he's saying, operate basically the same way. Ideas that we hold, self-images, perceptions, these are seeds. Know that you're working with law. This picture that you hold is like a seed, with calm expectation of a corresponding result. You know that all necessary conditions will come about in proper order. Beth and I are watching our beans and corn and watermelons and all that stuff begin to pop up. Did they pop up the first day we planted them? No, they don't do that. But you're complying with law by planting these seeds. And you know that they will come up. Not all of them will. That's why we plant so many of them. That's how nature works. It has thousands of babies, and not all of them survive. It's a prolific attempt to keep things going. But we're complying with law. Step 3 is to enter your daily routine with the calm assurance that conditions are either present already or will soon present themselves. If you do not see evidence at once, know that the spiritual prototype, that is your desire, is already in existence. That's one thing that one principle that metaphysics, it's a fundamental in metaphysics, is that mind is reality. Ideas are substance. And as you hold to ideas, they will unfold. So if you go through your life, and I like the idea, again, of calm assurance. Go through your life not looking everywhere, going out into the garden and digging up the seed to see if it's growing. We don't do that. If we don't see the seed popping up, we have the calm assurance that it will, that it is in the process of doing that at this very moment. And that's in the 2 steps saying, stay calm about things. Don't be frantic about it. Know that you're complying with law. And that's where your faith comes in. Absolute faith. You enter your daily routine, just go about your business with calm assurance that conditions are either present already, and that's an important. The fields are ready for harvest now. That's another principle Jesus talked about. That's what Troward is speaking of here. Either the conditions are present already or will soon present themselves. And there's something about that, to think the thing that I'm praying for, the condition could already be present. Think of it that way. It gives you a whole different level of expectation. It could be present and I'm not seeing it, but I will. When the time is right, I will see it. Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe you've received it. That's that idea. If you do not see evidence at once, know that the spiritual prototype or your desire is already in existence. Step number 4, wait until some circumstance pointing in the desired direction begins to show itself. It may be small, but it is the type and not the magnitude of the circumstance that is important. This is the first sprouting of the seed. So, if you want to get your life in order, I like what, I just now thought of it, can't think of his name at the moment, but he says if you want to get your life in order, choose one room in your house to clean up, to put it in order. I could choose about any room at this stage to do that. But it's a very good idea, because he says if you can't clean up a room, how are you going to clean up your life? It's a very simple beginning, a very simple idea. Catherine Ponder talks about that, the idea of cleaning out your closets. Go through your house, clean out all your closets, sell it all, give it away, do whatever. Just take all the stuff that you're not using and set it outside of your life and begin to put your life in order. It's very good advice. But wait until some circumstance pointing in the desired direction begins to show itself. That is, don't take action until you know what direction to go. It was Emerson that said, I prefer no action to misaction. And that's pretty good advice too. Because some people are busy doing all the time and not really getting anywhere, like the duck paddling like crazy under the surface. It may be small, but it is the type and not the magnitude of the circumstance that is important. This is the first sprouting of the seed. Okay, step 5. Do calmly, without excitement, whatever the circumstance seems to require. This will lead to the further unfolding of other circumstances in the same direction. By addressing each one as it appears, you're moving step by step toward the accomplishment of your desire. So he emphasizes this idea of calm, stay calm. Don't get excited. Have you ever noticed that when good things are happening, you can become just as hyper as when bad things are happening? It's hard to catch your breath. I would rather be hyper over good things happening than bad things, of course. I think we all would. But does your body know the difference? Does your heart know the difference between the good and the bad? It's when you're excited, and there's nothing wrong with being excited. Excitement is good. But he's saying when you're dealing with these things, just keep a balanced state of mind. And don't be like the person that they're praying for something, the answer comes, the woman seeking the perfect husband, and some guy shows up that she thinks is the right one, and her life is perfect now, and next thing you know, they're getting a divorce. She took him for better or for worse. He was a lot worse than she took him for. So that's happens. It happens. So we put much on the conditions, and he's just saying, don't allow yourself to get taken away by that. All right? Okay, so we'll take each one of these, as I said, week at a time, and just move through them all and kind of under a microscope, get some ideas. So you might want to bring a pad and paper to write stuff down, to make notes. I find that helpful sometimes. I actually have a series of steps that I've done on PowerPoint, which is this program, that I find very helpful, a series of affirmations. So anything you can do to just focus your attention, and this is one way to do it, can be helpful. All right? Thank you for coming out, and hope to see you next week.
Okay, one more time. Every person in every town longs to hear the story of love. Everybody, the whole world round, longs to hear what we're singing of. It's love, compassion and forgiveness. It's love, share friendship every day. It's love, encouragement and faithfulness. It's love, be a light along the way. Every person that we may meet longs to feel the feeling of love. Though their life may be bittersweet, there's one thing that we can be sure of. It's love, acceptance without judgment. It's love, feeling grateful every day. It's love, doing as we'd have it done for us. It's love, knowing love is here to stay. Though the clouds may try to block the sun, just keep looking up, the light will surely come. It's love. Every person in every town longs to hear the story of love. Everybody, the whole world round, longs to hear what we're singing of. It's love.
You've been watching a talk given by Reverend Doug Bottorff here at Independent Unity in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us spread our message. If you would like to support us, you can do so by clicking the button in the right-hand corner of the video screen. We greatly appreciate your support. Thanks again for watching.